All right, mates, welcome back to the channel. JL Scott Fishing and Eats. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend, fall weekend, incredible fishing over the weekend, especially in the Mid-Atlantic region. Incredible weather. We are still at 76 degrees where I am. Crazy in the DMV, the DC region. It's absolutely crazy. And the bite is just the bigger fish have been showing up. So it's kind of interesting. Had a bunch of questions. I hadn't really gotten to them by the end of the week, last week. I apologize for that. On, like daylight savings time, right? Does that really play any impact? You hear a lot about it in the spring, right? You can just Google it. I bet you could find just getting more hours in the day for fishing. Like we look at it from our perspective as having more light out on the water for us. But what is actually going on with, say, the smallmouth bass, right? Now, here's the big thing that a lot of people miss that aren't out on the water a ton. Maybe they go out once a month on the weekend, or maybe they only fish a lake, which is completely different. Lakes and impoundments are completely different than rivers in terms of the behavior. I fish a Western Maryland lake that is full of smallmouth bass. Those smallmouth bass do not behave the same way as the upper Potomac and the Allegheny smallmouth bass. They just don't. Okay? Again, it's their ecosystem. It's everything that encompasses what they're used to. And those things. And so what you get like a lot, like if you're a trout fisherman, for example, that last week before we go to standard time, set your clocks, but all that stuff, tends to be like one of the better like fishing weeks in a lot of parts of the country. So it begs the question, well, why is that? What really changed? I mean, it changes for us, but nothing really changes for the fish, right? Like, I mean, it's still a 24-hour cycle. There's still the moon phase. There's still the sun, all that stuff. So it's interesting to see about the fall for smallmouth bass is bigger smallmouth bass, especially in rivers, okay? Now, there are always going to be people who are going to point to biggins being caught in Lake Champlain, Lake Erie during the summer and all of that stuff, okay? Again, lakes, okay? But also on rivers, deeper rivers like St. Lawrence, right? But again, the general population of those bass are bigger, okay? More of them and of a bigger size variety that are not impacted. Remember, your lakes, okay, places like Champlain, places like Erie, places like that aren't really impacted by, say, rising water events, flood stage events, like, say, down south or the upper Potomac, right? The Monocacy, the upper Potomac, you name it, like Susquehanna, okay? They're not nearly as impacted in terms of spawning classes being wiped out, in terms of all those things. So the fish are just generally bigger, okay? So yes, you're gonna catch the 5-pound, 6-pound smallmouth bass in places like that during the summertime. You're largely not going to catch that in the summer in this region, okay? And even on the Susquehanna, okay, where you would think, there's going to be. Now, you can certainly get 19 and a halves and 20 inches on the Susquehanna during the summertime, but they are a lot, those populations are still, even though for our region, they're bigger on the Susquehanna, they're still small relative to other northeastern lakes and obviously Erie and places like that. So there are a lot of other river systems, though, I will tell you, in the region that have bigger fish than Susquehanna does. Okay, Susquehanna has a lot of numbers, absolutely, but there are places where you're going to catch 19 and a half to 20 and a half smallmouth bass. Now, in large part because those portions of those sections of those river systems in the region, especially down towards the Virginia area and West Virginia, are less pressured. Okay, so that has a lot to do with it. And a lot of those you're not going to find boats on. That has a lot to do with it, with the pressure. So when we're looking at the upper Potomac and even the Allegheny here, and we're looking at the fall, like what's really happening? What's happening is the biggins come out. And again, I have reports of 3-4 pounders, 4.12 in the region, a 3.15 Down, I think it's 3.12 or 3.15. Buddy of mine down in Richmond on the upper James. Well, it's not really the upper James when we think about Virginia. It's upper in terms of in Richmond City proper, above the fall line and above the dams, just above the dams. I know a lot of people contribute James River with tidal and like largemouth bass, but as you move west of Richmond, there's significant smallmouth populations that run all the way up to the upper James, okay, in Western Virginia. All right, and there are stretches that have biggins in that river, okay. And so this time of year, what's really happening with the bigger fish? The bigger fish, usually in the upper Potomac, for example, are kind of scarce in terms of they're very stationary. You've got to find them and come on them. Usually they're closer to the shallows. They're not roaming around as much. They're certainly not active during the day. They're active in the early morning. When I mean by early, I mean 5 a.m. to like 6:30 a.m. Okay, if you look at the catches from people, and then in the summertime after 6 o'clock at night. So they're feeding in low light conditions. Okay. If you just, again, keep a journal, and when you talk to people, write down when they're the time of the day and the size of the fish they're catching. I'm doing that for years, mates. And you will find out that when I mean by big fish, I'm talking 19s and above, 3 pounds and above, okay, for smallmouth. It's almost 95% of the time before 7 a.m. and after 6 p.m. at night. And you can see this too. And I say this, I get a lot of heat for this because look, it is what it is. You can go on Fishing Chaos, you can go on Tourney X, and you can look at people's catch or use Fishing Chaos for KBF and look at people's catches during the monthly challenge series. Just pick states that you're interested in, and you will see, like in Virginia, guys winning the Virginia KBF monthlies are predominantly fishing after 6 o'clock at night for largemouth. You can see in the photos. It's either early evening, late evening, or early morning before the sun comes up. You can just tell by the photos. Okay, and in a monthly, you're allowed to fish during that. In a tournament, that's why oftentimes you find a lot of guys that win the monthlies, and this is kind of like the thing that happens with the monthlies versus the tournament guys, is there's always this back and forth because the monthly guys can fish anytime they want. And the tournament guys have to fish 6:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. or something like that. And the same usually it doesn't correlate. The same guy. There are a few, but a lot of times it doesn't correlate because the fishing is different at night than it is during the early morning and up to lunchtime hours. And so some people can't really translate what they're doing at night to in the morning, and they don't perform as well. But they're doing very well in the monthlies because they can fish after work. And they can fish from 5:30 p.m. until 9-10 p.m. however they want. Like especially if they're fishing locally and they know the water. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is the light. The light. Okay. Biggins tend to like to feed in lower light conditions. The fall brings that lower light conditions a lot of times. The weather, the water drops in temperature. Okay. And so when that water drops, all the bass feed up, right? And so, but that also triggers to the bigger fish that it's time for them to start to roam and to start to transition, okay, from places from where they're being kind of more stationary in the summer to a stricter, smaller area that they're in, to having to roam. And that's what's happening right now in the upper Potomac. The smallmouth bass are roaming. You can see them. Doesn't matter if you're in the boat above Seneca, or you're in the stretch. And a lot of people have asked me, Jay, like, where are you? Like, dude, where are you fishing? Like, where are you? And I don't really care. If you meet me, I'm going to tell you exactly where I am at the ramp. So I'll say, you know what? I'll do a video for the people. This is where I fish every day, like every week, 3-4 times a week. Okay. During the fall, probably twice a week, a little bit less. There's a lot more stuff going on. There's a lot more sports going on. There's a lot more stuff on Saturdays. There's games on Saturdays. There may not be tournaments, but there's a lot going on, which is why there's less and less and less people on the river, as well as what else is happening. Hunting season, right? People are getting ready for hunting season. People are getting ready for Thanksgiving. People are doing different things. Outdoors people are off the river, which leaves the river to those of us who love to fish the river in the fall. So the primary aspects of where I'll go from where I am, most people know that I drop my girls off at school and I'm on the water within 30 minutes, depending on how far up the Potomac I want to go to put in. I can put in at Pennyfield right here, Pennyfield, right here. If you put in at Pennyfield, you got about a 50-yard, 70-yard stretch after you go under the towpath bridge in your kayak or your canoe out into the main river, okay? And then you're on the main river of the upper Potomac. You can go south towards D.C., down the Swains Lock, which is another lock that I will put in. It's not really a launch. It's kind of like a modified launch. You kind of just have to work your way through the campsite right here. And then you can put right in and then work your way around Gladys Island, Lock Island if you want to go down Minnehaha Island. There's good fishing here on these endpoints in this area. In it, or you go Pennyfield, which predominantly this time of year is better in the fall, is to go out of Pennyfield and then head toward Dam 2. Okay. Now, if you go on my channel, you can see plenty of videos from out there, what the water looks like, short videos, long form. And you can see just what I'm talking about, like the structure that's in the middle right out here. There's trees they're basically jammed up on ledges, okay, because of the flood. They're providing now structure where this time of year, the bass are all in it. They're all in that structure now in the middle of the river. And then they're roaming, from Elm Island here. This is a very, very like cool area on this flat where you can just freaking come out of Pennyfield, come up around, fish in between these islands here, and then just load up your kayak up on the bar. It's like more like a sandbar than an island, to be honest, mates. And get out and wade fish and just wade fish this whole area if you want. It's perfect in the summertime. Right now, mates, you're looking at less than 3 feet at Edwards Ferry, which is up north of where Pennyfield is. 2.5 feet down at Little Falls, which is way south of Swains. And then you've got a foot of water at Point of Rocks, which is above Brunswick up further upriver. That tells you what the water's like now in November, right? It is not deep, okay? Cool. Absolutely, the temperatures have come down, which have caused a lot of the bite to improve. And you can run all the way up to here. Here is Dam 2, okay? It doesn't really do it justice. I'm going to change this up a little bit, okay? So you got all these islands in here to fish on the Virginia side, which most people don't fish, okay? So you hardly ever see anybody over here, okay? Most people are putting it on the Maryland side, and they're staying tucked on this side of Pond Island, and then down all the kayak tours, all that kind of stuff stay to the right on the Maryland side, go up to the old dam of the rocks, and then they come back down the same side. They don't do the Virginia side. Now, when you switch to satellite view, you can see here, look at that. It is all rock, okay? Rock, all in here with water gap. You can park your kayak, park your canoe, get out of here at the lock, cut through, come down the towpath, and then walk in, put in, come all the way down. If you don't mind a half a mile walk, okay, put in here, wade fish all this rock section all through here. Now, all this, how's that relate? Well, Pennyfield is back down here, okay, right down here. Okay, so it's a pretty easy kayak. If you got a trolling motor, it's very easy to get all the way up to this rock, to these lead, it's like almost like a little fall line. Okay, that's why the boats don't come here. Okay, boats for the most part. You may sometimes you get a mud guy, mud rucker, with the John boat. Okay, running through here. But for the most part, you're looking at Seneca above here, putting in. Okay, right up here, your Brentonwood soccer fields, boom, right here, and they're running. They're running up to Edwards Ferry, or they're putting it at Edwards Ferry and going up, or they're putting it at Point of Rocks and they're going up, or they're putting it at Landon and they're going up to Brunswick. I mean, that's kind of how it rolls here, and you got to deal with the jet boats and the boats and all that stuff. But down below here, even if you get in at Riley's, you can go down here, and then you've got this whole area to fish here. And I like this area a lot. I tell everyone who's wade fishing, this is a prime example for prime location for you to go if you've never caught smallmouth bass before, and you don't have a boat, you don't have a kayak, because they're waiting for stuff to come over that area. Bait fish to come down the river, bait fish to come down, and they're going to be hanging in these larger areas and these larger boulders and just slamming them. And that's usually where like the jerk bait is a good bait. The crankbait is a good bait. Your inline spinner is a good bait. All that, especially in fall. Now, what I tend to like to do right now, it's been very, very successful for me in the fall, and I've kind of gotten some other people to do the same thing, and I'm getting some feedback from them, is I like to start out with a crankbait. If I was in the tidal Potomac, I'll be cranking all day long with shad pattern, herring pattern, river herring pattern, all that stuff in the fall. Up in Upper Bay, same thing. Okay, that's what I would start out with. I start with a small crank, okay, that mimics bait fish like this. This becomes my search bait. I don't do the spinner bait. I don't do any of that this time of year. I know some people do. I think the colors and all the spinner baits just aren't really like a fall thing for the fish. They're very summer oriented or spring oriented. I just have not really had great success with the spinner bait. Traditional spinner bait in the fall. Inline spinner, completely different. If you also caught a short video when I was out on the water a few weeks ago, I picked up a wrong bait. And it's basically it was unbelievable. It was straight up fire. And I didn't even intend to. I picked it up by accident. I was like, "What the hell?" I'll put it on. Wasn't really having that much success that day, and so I was like, "What the heck?" I got it in my hand. I'll put it on, and boom, boom, 3 of 5 casts with a smallmouth bass on that thing. So I'll start out with this because it's small. It's got the knocker and the ping, perfect fall. They're feeding up. Then, okay, once I dial that in, okay, what I mean by dial that in is if I catch 2 or 3 fish with the crankbait in the same general area, like 25-yard, 30-yard area, the smallies are roaming like that, that is when I will then move to the jig. Okay, now, this may seem like a little big for the fall, and it is, okay, which is why you always want to have the ability to remove that trailer, obviously, which makes it a little smaller profile. Or you have your change up, which is a smaller jig. Look at the difference in size, okay? Still got a little paddle tail, crawl trailer, paddle tail trailer, smaller profile, okay? Going through the rocks. Okay, I like that jig head that's just in the water that moves along. Okay, this bounces towards the bottom, and then that's what's waving. Very loose here on the soft plastic used for that. So it's a lot more wiggle there. Love the chartreuse color. Okay, now I'm going to do a video for swim bait, so check that out. Okay, again, do not underestimate these 2 colors. Okay, chartreuse and black and red and black, okay, during the fall. Remember, lower light conditions, okay, also cause the bass's eyes, okay, what they see. Remember their conal, remember their eyes. Remember I've done tons of videos on what do bass really see. They don't really see all the other colors you're seeing on the big box aisle. They don't really see all those colors, okay? They just don't. We know that. It's science, okay? They see greens and they see reds primarily, okay? Bleeding bait fish, right? Why is that a number 1? And so if you couple that with a dip or a attracted or some kind of scent, that's where you're going to get the hookups, okay? Color is important. Presentation is more important, okay, in terms of getting it there and what the action is going to be, but then also the smell of the fish. Remember, they are in a frenzy. They need to fish up, feed up. They need to, because they know they need to increase their calories, okay, because they know as this water is slowly coming down, okay, and it's kind of stalled right now, so the fish are kind of reacting kind of weird, but it's stalled right now because the weather we got warm. We got 75 to 80 degrees in the Mid-Atlantic region after having 50 degrees 2 weeks ago. Okay, so the water temperature has stayed. Okay, it's not dropping as fast as it was. Okay, so they got triggered, then they shut down, and then they're slowly starting to feed up again. As that temperature falls, we're going to get a lot of rain this weekend, and the temperature is going to fall below 60. So you may start to see, again, a second transition, is what that's called, okay, where they transition to feeding areas, okay, because they know now the temperature of the water is coming and they know what happens at the end of it. At the end of it, they need to be fully fed up before the first freeze, okay? That's what happens. That first 30, that first storm, that first 30, low 30s, okay? Because then bait is scarce, okay? And so they'll have to have fed up on that. And that's where you want to actually capitalize on your different presentations. So what I'm talking about is if you want to catch fish all day long, just keep throwing what you got. Like the old adage is like, I don't leave fish to find fish, right? Why would I change baits, Jay, if I'm catching them on my crankbait? Because you're looking to increase size. You've already located the school, right? Maybe you've located the bait fish. Maybe you've located where they are. And you're getting like I've had experience where I've gotten 6 or 7, 8, 10, 12-inch fish, okay, off the crankbait. Well, then I switch to the jig, okay, and then grab a 15 or a 14, see? Because remember, okay, it is still, that transition period of fall to winter. So the water temperature is changing. It's getting cooler, right? So the summer patterns are done. They're toast, right? The smallies are relating to wherever there is thermal. Where is there thermal? Structure, rock, okay? Anything that's going to hold heat, okay, is where they're primarily going to relate to, okay? That could be fallen trees. Again, if a tree is up out of the water in the middle of the river, it's going to have part of its tree, obviously, in the water on the base of the river, where it's going to accumulate thermal from the sun on top, thermal from the earth on the river composition. It provides a little warmth for the fish, and that's why they relate to it. And more importantly, that's where a lot of the forage fish will relate to. Remember, not all forage fish like cold water. That's why there's so many forage fish during the summertime. You see them everywhere, right? The forage fish are gonna try and find as much heat as they can. Now, not all forage fish. You got to know your forage in your rivers to know which ones relate better to cold water, which ones relate better to warm water. Okay, what happens when the cold water comes is that those fish start to die. That forage species starts to die out. Okay, which limits the number of fish available, forage fish species available as you get closer to winter. So you're limiting that, and you're also eliminating the number of fishermen. So for the bass, this is what happens. This is why fall fishing is such a gem for a lot of us. Because most people are hunting. Most people don't want to be on the water. Most people don't want to be layered up. Most people don't want to be any of that as you get closer to December. There's less bait fish as well. And the fish are still looking for food, right? They still got to eat. All right. And so that's where the opportunity comes in. And so these areas, like right in here, it's less than 1.5 feet of water. Okay. So you want to find a pool somewhere where it's 3 feet. And you're going to find that down below the rocks. Okay. Between Pennyfield and Dam 2. Okay. There's deep water pools. And by deep water, mates, I'm talking 3 feet, 3 to 3.5 feet drops. And they will sit in that deep water. Okay. Especially if there's rock nearby where they can get the thermal. All right. And so that's what you really want to look for. And again, this is what I talked about. If you go back and look at the videos, I set the fall up for most people who have watched the channel, who are fishing, who I know are fishing in these stretches of the Upper Potomac. Because I did a bunch of videos. Go back and look. You got to probably find them on the short side of the channel. But there's also some videos on the long portion on YouTube where I'm walking the river. And I'm pointing out, I'm marking in my journal what I was walking in 1 foot of water. That area of the river is now 2.5 to 3 feet, okay, where I was walking because it was a deeper area on the backside of an island. Remember this video where I found like 16 tires all laid out, right? Shell beds. Mark. Why? Because that's where fish are going to be relating to in the fall going into winter because it's going to hold a little bit of heat, okay? Flat beds to drop off. So the shell bed and then a 2 foot drop off or a 2 or 2.5 to 3 foot drop off adjacent to a shell bed is going to be the money spot, okay, on the Upper Potomac when you find them. Grass lines starting to die back. Grass is starting to die out, okay? So they're not going to be relating as much to grass. They're going to be relating more to rock. Again, between Swains and Seneca, okay? Now, when you get above Seneca, okay, the pattern could be completely different of what they're relating to. Water is deeper. So remember, it's 3+ feet at Edwards, 3 feet at Edwards Ferry at any given time. It's a lot of deeper water on the Virginia side. Goose Creek coming into the river flushes. Monocacy coming into the river is bringing current flow and water flow. Those are great areas. Largemouth bass in Goose Creek. If that Goose Creek enters Upper Potomac, that's kind of an area where right in there on the points you can find some largemouth bass, believe it or not. And so these are all 8 things that you can apply here when you're looking at the Upper Potomac. And so when you pop this open, you kind of look here of what you have above where the area I'm talking about. See if it's going to let me get in there. There we go. So there's Edwards Ferry right there. So you've got Goose coming. You got right here another Elizabeth Riverfront Park going here. But this area right here, right across, a lot of people just run straight on up. Okay. Remember, Seneca is below here. And then you've got Harrison Island. A lot of people fish to the right side of that all the way up. And then you've got White's Ferry if it's open. I haven't been to White's Ferry in a while, mates. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes that one's, I don't believe, is open all the time. White's Ford on the Virginia side. Dickerson South. You got this all the way up. Okay, remember we're heading up towards Monocacy. Okay, so Monocacy is going to enter into the water. So between that, you've got 2 tribs entering the Potomac in that stretch, especially if you're in a boat. And so that's why a lot of people will cover that. And so it's just interesting to see that, depending on perspective, kayak, canoe versus boat or jet boat. You can make those long runs and then do all that, but it's going to end up stopping. You get towards Point of Rocks when you're looking at a half a foot of water in some places where you can just walk straight across the river to Virginia near the bridge there at Point of Rocks. So that's really what the just an update on really what's happening right now. My neck of the woods. Usually out, like I said, 2 times, maybe 3 times. The weather holds here. I'm gonna be out this week, today. Probably be out again 2 more times this week until that drop below 60 happens. We're going to get some rain this weekend. Sometimes that's a good thing, though, on the river. But again, start with that crankbait. Even go with browns. Like you can still use the crawl crank, smaller one or a larger one. Use that as your search bait to start out with, or an inline spinner, smaller inline spinner. Traditionally you probably wouldn't think about, for bass fishing. You throw like a rooster tail, old school rooster tail, stuff like that. Use that to kind of locate them and then go to your jig or your swim bait. I'm going to do a video quickly coming up probably later tonight on my hair jig swim bait for the 4-pounder and show you what that's all about because it's just translatable. It's translatable from Western Maryland, deep lakes with smallmouth bass and largemouth, but mostly smallmouth bass up towards the western part of the state, Garrett County, Washington County, all that up towards Pennsylvania and West Virginia, as well as on the river. And so, I'm going to cover that. It's probably something I'm going to get a lot of heat for revealing because it's, if you know. But it's the off season. Most of the tournaments, other than I think the TOC still is going down next weekend or this weekend. I can't remember. But other than that, everything's pretty much done. This is the perfect time of year to be kind of like tutorialing and teaching some custom bait things and showing some different modifications you can do to baits. And all that to really, really like dial things in because spring's going to be here pretty quick. That's just the way it is. These seasons are not very long. And so you want to take advantage of that. All right, mates.